the way they are networked into their environment, the way that house of mirrors operates, the kinds of connections that they have, generates the image for them. And this goes all the way up to Donald Trump, by the way, because Donald Trump, again, was interviewed pertaining to the Renee Good shooting, and he was wrong about the contents of the footage that he watched with the journalists. So last night, I was, because I'm in a bunch of Discord servers. One of them is the Crucible's Discord server, right? Because I've moderated debates in the past. I argue with people very occasionally, but I was arguing with somebody about like some philosophical thing. It was very, very stupid. And I called him out. I was like, "Yeah, this sounds like a VC debate." And then I immediately went to sleep because I'm dumb. I woke up, looked at my phone. Oh, you didn't show up. I guess the other person gets the win. So I was like, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll go into VC right now. Okay, you free now? I'll do it right now. So I go into VC. I see some of the people there who are part of that conversation. Talk about board games with some random people. There's some people from other servers as well, because there's people from like Ask Yourselves community in there too, because it's a big debate space. And I noticed that Andrew Wilson and a bunch of other people were talking down below in the in one of the other VCs. So I joined. I was curious what was going on. And they're talking about like the limits of American power and so on. And this is my jam. So I get into that conversation a little bit. And it goes into a long conversation about the innateness of tribalism in humanity, right? I forget the exact way in which it got to that conversation, but that argument lasted for a good solid like hour and a half, I think roughly. And down the line, at one point, it transitioned to talking about the recent killing of Renee Good, right? And as I mentioned earlier, the temperature of the conversation went from like a 3 or 4, because it got a little bit heated, because we were like, you're pushing back and forth on the question of like the innateness of group tribalism in human beings. I was obviously taking the negative position that there is such a thing. Not tribalism, but the innateness of it. And what was very interesting to me, very interesting indeed, is that Andrew was taking a very staunch, as you can guess, he was taking a very staunch position in favor of the shooting. But at the beginning of the conversation, there was a back and forth in which I had to explain, after he said that in the footage, well, no, he got hit, the officer got hit by the car, right? The officer got hit by the car, that justifies the killing. It was like, no, he didn't. No, he didn't get hit by the car. You can see on the footage. Like, yeah, it's on the footage. It's like, well, what was, which footage are you talking about? Which camera angles? Like from the officer's camera, the body cam. It's like, it's not, what was the camera? What was the, his personal recording device? What was the recording device, Andrew? And he was like, a body camera. It's like, no, it's not a body camera. It was a cell phone. You can see in the reflection on the car, it's a cell phone. And then it continued to where we were like, who was hit? There was the officer like on the side of the door. There's the officer on the front of the car, and he thought the officer on the side of the car was the one that was hit. And then it was the officer on the front and the officer on the side. And it was very apparent that he could not remember what the footage depicted. And I don't think he was lying. He brought up the footage afterwards. That was corrected. And this is why I'm talking about this, because I think it's actually it's very important. He brought up the footage that was at this point essentially fresh to his eyes, right? And then the conversation went down a number of paths where the conflation of ICE with law enforcement was being used to say like, well, she was resisting, she was defying law enforcement. She had a lawful order. To which I argued, well, he's not a cop. He doesn't have the same authority over an American citizen as a cop does. This is an ICE agent. And no, it's a lawful order. And we went down into some weird territory, like, well, is it a Terry stop? I had to learn what a Terry stop was, because that's an American thing. If it is a Canadian thing, which I don't think it is, if it is, it's under a different name. But I was not familiar, so we had to like look at that very quickly. But that had to do with, once again, like police and this massive conflation. And what was so interesting about that conversation is that at every single step of the way, the move was to justify the use of force by ICE, but the conditions justifying it constantly shifted. So first it was lawful order. Second it was drove the car into them. Thirdly, the last one, this is where it ended off, was, well, maybe she will drive around back to hit them again. Now this is assuming that the initial quote unquote impact that didn't take place was deliberate, right? Maybe she'll shoot her, and to which I responded like, well, so wait, are you in favor of ICE proactively shooting Americans in the back? Yeah. I didn't actually get a defiance of that point. That's not interesting. It's predictable. You guys got to stop thinking that because Republicans and conservatives are in favor of killing and have a fascist streak, that therefore we understand them thoroughly. Because I don't know how to explain this to you guys. If we understood them so thoroughly, why are we losing so badly? Because there's a flip side to this, which is a major component of why they're able to do this is because of exactly those same blurred categorizations that normalize violence elsewhere. And one of the most interesting things about this, no, I'm talking about Andrew Wilson, I don't think he was lying in this conversation. That's what I find interesting. You assuming he's lying is a mistake. I think that's actually a big mistake. I think assuming these people in general are lying is a big mistake, because the power of this doesn't come from it being a massive conspiracy. Did he refer to the victim as a terrorist? Actually, no. Actually, in that conversation, no. The main angle was resistance to authority, higher authority. That was the major theme. I found it very interesting. There was a center of gravity towards subjection to higher authority. I'm not assuming he's lying. I'm assuming he's backing into his positions. Well, I don't know what you're saying then, because earlier you said he's a liar. So leaving all that aside, that doesn't matter. Because here's the thing. It's not a matter of backing into... They aren't backing into positions. They are blind. They are literally blind. They are seeing footage before it exists. They are seeing impacts in advance of knowing the positioning of the people. He did not realize at the beginning of that conversation that the person who he was certain got hit by the vehicle was in front of the car, which is interesting. Just the physics of it is interesting. How do you get hit on the side of a car? Right? Oh, I misread regular dude. Yours with a Zoshalik. Stop getting into a twist. You're not that important. Chill. And I think that's very interesting. See, when Pisco was debating with Chud Logic, right? Yes, you are that important, Darkwana. That's true. When Pisco was debating with Chud Logic, I think, was taking a very cynical position. Chud Logic is trying to sell himself to the right. So he did a bunch of research into legal precedents and whatnot with ChatGPT, and he was just bullshitting that conversation with Pisco. In his case, he is twisting himself into a pretzel to justify his position, because he's an empty shell of a human being. In this case, these people are literally blind. They can see the footage. They can see that nothing happened. They can see that, look, it's on a cell phone. Ergo, when the car moves forward in that footage, that's not the center of mass. It's to the left. It's in his left hand. Because he switches hands in that footage, right? And they aren't genuine believers either. And this is something that we need to start really internalizing, because it's actually really important. It's actually one of the reasons why we are so bad at convincing people of things, generally. When we talk about people being true believers or being cynical fakers, we sort of presume that there is a person behind the person's face that has a hidden hand of cards. Okay, they know what they're actually holding. okay, and they're waiting to play it, but right now they're bluffing, right? They're pretending they don't have the hand that they are holding. We often call this like hiding their power level, right? Their mental faculties are completely broken. They can't discern what is happening on screen. We'll make up details. No, that's the other thing too, and this is something really important. These people are not stupid. You need to understand that these people are not stupid. Having normal or even above average intellectual capacities does not protect you from this. It doesn't protect you from this at all. There is no secret little man behind their face holding a hand of cards that you can't see. That's not what's taking place. What's taking place is the way they are networked into their environment, the way that house of mirrors operates, the kinds of connections that they have, generates the image for them. And this goes all the way up to Donald Trump, by the way, because Donald Trump, again, was interviewed pertaining to the Renee Good shooting, and he was wrong about the contents of the footage that he watched with the journalists. He was wrong about the footage he watched with the journalists, but he watched it with them. He asked for the footage to be brought out, which suggests confidence in what that footage would show. But he was wrong, obviously. That means he's not lying. That means he's delusional. But not just he is delusional. A whole lot of people are delusional in the exact same way, and a lot of them are not stupid. People will talk about like right-wingers as being stupid. Like Vosh said, they're like lizards. This is a mistake. This is a big mistake. Well, was he wrong or intentionally misrepresenting it? No, he was wrong. He was very wrong. Andrew Wilson was very wrong. And not just very wrong, I think his position was extremely unethical. Condemnable even. But how he got there was not intentional. How he got there was not a deliberate attempt at obfuscation. Super important. I mean, it's not the first time Trump believed his own horseshit. Yeah, but stop being smug about it. Like, seriously. Seriously, stop being smug about it. Oh, he's just dumb. Look how dumb stop being smug about it. That's not how power works. You think being technically wrong? You think being wrong counts? You think being wrong counts? Nick Fuentes has been out parroting Paul Singer on, hey, look, Venezuela's oil, it's ours now. Paul Singer, Zionist. That's the level we're at. Stop being smug about these people being dumb. Because it shows that you don't know how they're actually working. You don't know how any of this is actually working. That doesn't prove Trump was lying. It means he didn't know he was lying at the time. It means that almost to a certainty, actually. It's not smug to recognize these people love amping up their nonsense propaganda by telling themselves scary stories. Yeah, like we don't. Everybody does this. Everybody does this. What are you talking about? They aren't viewing the footage. These people aren't viewing the footage. They're not seeing the recordings. They're knowing of the recordings. And then the recordings, the blanks are being filled in by themselves. They aren't seeing what's happening in the footage. They aren't even seeing the footage. I would actually be very surprised if even a sizable fraction of them have even looked at the recording. And by looking at the recording, I don't mean they saw Lefty getting shot, went lol and moved on, because I think a lot of them did that. I don't think any of them analyzed it. I don't think any of them had a map internally of the actual state of affairs, the actual like sequence of events. Because again, Andrew Wilson, who already knew that the cop was he already knew that a cop was hit by the car. When it's an ICE agent who was not hit by a car. He was already convinced that that had taken place, but he couldn't tell where he was. He couldn't tell if he was in front. He didn't know if he was on the side. And he had to look at it again. And I got to tell you, I remembered exactly where everybody was in that footage. I remember exactly. 2 people get out of a truck. One other person walks around from the other side. One person approaches the car, tells the lady to get out of the car. Other person is walking around the front, is at the corner when the car starts moving, shoots into the corner of the glass. I remember it like a film reel. Car goes off, hits another car. And what's really important is that we all do this everybody does this exact same read. When you see people who immediately presumed, for example, the exact nature of what happened on October 7th, in whatever direction, in advance of researching anything, everybody knew what their take was immediately. They're doing the same thing. Everybody knew when they were talking about everyone had a picture in their head of what happened with Maduro. Everyone had a picture in their head of what happened with Charlie Kirk. And that picture has nothing to do with the actual footage. That picture is entirely laterally generated. It's entirely laterally generated. Okay, it's like Jurassic Park, okay? The raptor attacks not from the front, but from the side, while you're distracted from the one in front of you. Which means our strategy can't be from the front, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. Because you can see what's from the front. You can see who's occupying the front. Right? Democrat Party is from the front. Oh yeah, a lot of these people are grifters, by the way, just to be clear. There are grifters. There are absolutely grifters. Disturbingly, I think a lot of them are actually on the Democrat side, and I think a lot of the people on the Republican side are just enmeshed in a cognitive, a cognitively freezing web, right? Because something else struck me in that conversation. People in that chat were angry. And not angry because they were frustrated about me winning, because I wasn't winning. It was going well. I was not being steamrolled at all. It was actually going quite well. But I wasn't winning. Because you can't win. Which is not like giving myself an out for doing badly. I actually think it did I surprised myself. I think I did actually quite well. Which I don't say lately, by the way. But there were people who were angry. Fuck you, one of them said, loudly. And I can sort of understand what the move was. I was listening, again, like, I was listening to a Radio War Nerd podcast, which, by the way, you should all subscribe to. It's on, I think it's on Spotify. Unfortunately. Not Spotify, Podbean. Oh, that's better. Okay. Maybe it's better. I don't know. Is Podbean bad? It's on Podbean. It just had a green icon, so I thought Spotify, but it's on Podbean. And before they were talking to, what's her face? Anya Parampil, who has a book called Corporate Coup on Venezuela, which I ordered, actually. So I'm gonna be reading that over the next little bit. They started talking about the Renee Good killing, and they were talking about the way in which conservatives basically all came out of the woodwork in orgiastic glee about this. With a few notable exceptions, of course. You had people like Joe Rogan, you had people like Tucker Carlson demonstrate the one-sided remaining edge of a little bit of their humanity in some respect, potentially, hopefully. Radio War Nerd, the podcast is called Radio. They're very good. They're very good. Brooks introduced me to them. I often get a lot of good book recommendations from them. They're very good. They do like an hour-long podcast, and sometimes they'll have emergency podcasts, Like when something big happens, like Venezuela. So they've had two episodes pertaining to Venezuela over the last couple of weeks, over the last week, I should say. But one of the things they talked about was how they were talking about how like all of these conservatives have come out sort of univocally in orgiastic celebration of this, like a human sacrifice. They wanted blood, and it's not what they expected it would look like, but it'll do. What can I say? They really hate women. I mean, a lot of them do, to be clear, and in a more nuanced way, I would say all of them do. But leaving that aside, I think it's something a little bit different going on. I think the killing of Charlie Kirk is a reverberation. One end of the spider web over here, and then this acts as that. All of this acts as that. And in their imagination, a picture is formed in which tit for tat is taking place between things that have no relation to each other, but it's all unified together. There's a really good book called The Cultural Politics of Emotion by Sarah Ahmed, which if you haven't read, you absolutely should. And one of the things that Ahmed talks about is the way in which pain establishes the contours of a surface. The function of pain is to establish the existence of a surface. By dint of a perceived breach of a surface, the identity of the thing is generated. Right? The feeling, the emotion, the sensation of attack over here created a sense of a whole with a W, W-H-O-L-E, that could feel pressure on this end, and therefore also could feel pressure on this end, right? And what's crucial is sort of like how when you feel, when you get hit by something, you get angry, when you like stub your toe, you'll hit something else, right? You will treat the world as if it is an agent that is intending you harm. You'll strike out at random stuff that is unrelated to the source of the pain that hit you. Or it will be something unintelligent. You'll burn your hand on a kettle that broke. You'll throw the kettle across the room. The kettle doesn't care. Only person you've hurt is yourself, and now you need a new kettle. Well, I guess you needed one anyways, because in the analogy it was broken. But let's say the kettle, like you filled it too far, it spilled, burned you, then you... Right. We need to start thinking about how we approach this type of thing, not in terms of sides, but in terms of emotional connections that produce the illusion of sides, right? Because the illusion, there are no sides here, and this is actually really important to understand. There is not a humanitarian side and a non-humanitarian side. There are different angles that are perfectly permissive of extreme violence against innocent people in multiple different directions. I'll give you an example. And this is where I actually have a lot of sympathy with not the way in which Bad Empanada does things, but with the rhetoric that he actually does deploy to a very limited extent. And this is what I mean. It has been pointed out correctly that the death of Renee Good has been treated with an order of magnitude more seriousness when it is exactly the kind of arbitrary, wanton violence that has been experienced with Democrat assistance and often approval on the people of Palestine for the past 3 years. Actually, significantly longer than that, but it's been in our headlights for that long. Venezuela was brutalized and manipulated and attacked by Democrats long in advance of Trump following through and doing the stupid thing that is really what Democrats are mad about him doing, which is showing nakedly that the aims of America with respect to Venezuela are just to steal its oil, and that all of this talk about Venezuela being run by a dictator, they don't really give a shit about that, because they are themselves that thing vis-a-vis those people. They don't care about their self-determination. They are perfectly fine with equipping, arming, and placing entirely corrupt people in the place of Maduro, right? In fact, they are perfectly fine with it being readily apparent to the world that this is just a mafioso relationship in which they aren't actually engaging in regime change. They are simply removing a president who didn't play ball and leaving someone from the same administration in power with the knowledge that if they don't follow the line, they will suffer the same fate or worse. Probably worse, because there's less name recognition, so people won't care as much if that person winds up somewhere dark and outside of civilization. Guys, chill out on okay? This is look, this topic gets people angry. There's a lot of good reasons to be angry about it. I actually am 100% sympathetic to people who have the most uncharitable and violent reads on these people, because you're probably right a lot of the time in a lot of the ways that really matter. I'm interested primarily right now in understanding our situation and figuring out better ways to approach it, because obviously we are losing. And a big part of why we're losing is because we don't really understand the contours of what we refers to. We does not mean the Democrats, by the way, because once again, capital is playing all sides here, or rather, capital is pretending to play all sides while also veiling itself, because the Democrats and the Republicans both have the same predatory attitude towards other peoples, including their own people. People don't know that there's a lot of people don't know this. There's a blind spot in the middle of your vision. Did you know that? The very center of your eye is actually blind. You can't see anything there. Doesn't feel like it though, does it? Feels like you look at things and you see them. They're just there in your head. Boo! I don't see a hole in the middle of my perception of this glass. It's just all there. There's a literal hole in your vision. A lot of people don't know that the extremity of their vision is black and white. Do you see a black and white film around your vision? No. But that's actually what's there. A lot of people who are very dangerously thin don't realize that they aren't fat. And they starve themselves. It's called anorexia. That principle you can expand way beyond like vision, right? And when we engage with these people, or when we engage with the situation, if that doesn't involve engaging with these people directly, we need to move past the idea that there is any capacity to move the line or to shift people based upon an adversarial one-on-one debate. It doesn't work. I'm going to give an example of how it affected me actually in the context of that debate. There was an article that I mentioned. I think I actually mentioned it in a recent video essay. There's an article, and it was cited by a couple of places, that talked about the illiteracy of ICE agents that were being grabbed. And because it was cited by other papers, it didn't clock in my head that this was the Daily Mail. Now, why this matters is because the Daily Mail is a notoriously unreliable paper, right? But because in my spider web, if you will, it matched the vibrations of all of the other lines that were going, I accepted that line, that one sentence. Now, it is actually the case that they've expedited the training for ICE agents. It is actually the case that ICE agents are behaving grossly irresponsibly because they lack training. It is actually the case that they've been using AI to go through their resumes, and they've been putting people with no police experience, no law enforcement experience at all, in important positions in ICE where they are actually in charge of some people. But because that resonated with the vibrations of the rest of that web, that one line slipped through, illiterate. That's important, because I brought that up in the debate. And they didn't have a point of reference for that. I would have. But here's the problem. If I was actually called upon then to defend that in an actual debate, I would be toast. Why? Why? Because I'd be relying on a paper that then I would also have to, in another capacity, say, well, I've actually argued against the reliability of this paper. I didn't scrutinize that. The picture was too clear. Now, it doesn't really affect any other part of the argument, but it's a small example. It's a small example of how, like, we are relying on incredibly incomplete information all the time. And it takes a lot of diligence to make sure that we're not. And the picture still remains as complete as it was, regardless of how much information there. Yeah, The Independent mentioned the Daily Mail article, actually. And if I got that wrong, by the way, same difference. Because it lacks that certainty, right? But, oh, was it The Independent? Yeah, it might have been The Independent, actually. Oh, see, there you go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let's see. Independent. Oh, well, see, there you go. I misremembered, so it doesn't matter. It's the same principle. Look, hey, good. Woo, past me, he wasn't reading the Daily Mail by accident. Nice. Doesn't matter. Same difference. It doesn't save me, unfortunately, but thank you, Lisa. Look, it's right here. Sorry, suckers. Looks like ICE actually is illiterate. Fuck me. It doesn't matter. Look, here's the point. Let's just leave that on screen for a second. Undo my error. But it illustrates something great, doesn't it? It works anyways. That's the beauty of it. I play both sides, so I always come out on top. I need to not stream after exercising. But here's the point though, okay? Most stuff in the Daily Mail has a bit of truth. Yeah, they're talking about real people and they do write in English, so I mean, yeah, probably stands to reason. You tend to have a grain of truth in order to lie about stuff that is real, right? But well, I don't read the Daily Mail. That's the thing. I think it was a reference to something else, but I don't know where. Let's see. Actually, am I going crazy here? Oh! No, I was right. Look at that. Sorry, I just didn't tell the whole story. Boom. With the goal of uh-oh. Where is it? Where did it go? I clicked a thing and it moved. Here we go. With the goal of hiring 10,000 new deportation officers by the end of the year, the Homeland Security Department appears to be cutting corners according to investigation by the Daily Mail. There we go. We have people failing open book tests, and we have folks who can barely read or write English. One DHS official told the L. Now, by the way, it might actually be a perfectly valid study, but it's by the Daily Mail. It's by the Daily Mail. I don't trust the Daily Mail. That's a problem. I believe it. I believe it readily. Doesn't matter. The point is not that either of these conditions are true, and I'm not really attached to this, right? The issue is not illiteracy. The issue is the violation of American rights and the breakdown of the distinction between the purview of the police and the purview of ICE agents, and the conditions under which American votes can be eliminated with bullets. Here's the upshot, though. The picture that people form precedes and conditions the actual literal physical pictures that they are shown, which means you can't argue with them because it's always going through this interpretive filter and it doesn't work. Stuff generates this way libidinally, once again, laterally. It's generated not from your eyes in the front, like you're just an intellect with sensors that just sees truth and it just goes inside your brain. You just have the world inside of you. No, it is all produced from all angles and not from the front. So when you are debating them, and this also happened a lot in that debate too, there was a constant, and to me, which was interesting, there was a constant referral to leftists, evolutionists, materialists, etc., as if that's just a category that's just in front of you. So I'm of that category. I can be engaged with as an avatar of that thing. When a Democrat shill debates these people, they are seeing an avatar of that thing, but they are presented with perfect, crystal clear demonstrations of the actual, quote unquote, according to the vibrations of their web, corruption of every other person attached to them. Oh yeah, and your vision's flipped, right? Your vision's also flipped. Your retina is flips the image, or something flips the image. I don't know the exact. I forget the exact anatomical relationship, but I remember the textbook image. I know. I took science class.